Welcome to the Learn from Everyone podcast. I'm your host, Tim,
Yeah.
and today I have Gregory Thomas, and he has been kind enough to be my first ever interview guest. And we recorded this at the end of the podcast, so we're going to have to cut it and put it at the beginning. Because,
All
we
right.
had such a great conversation, we launched right into it.
Yeah.
But as far as
That's
Gregory
cool.
Thomas, as soon as I started reading your work, I knew I want to talk to this guy.
Hey,
Hey, Gregory, how are you doing?
doing good. Finally got a chance to meet you.
Yeah, definitely. I've been looking forward to this.
Cool, 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 cool. So you say your name is
Tim.
Tim. Yeah, Tim,
Yeah,
and I'm Gregory. My writer's name is Gregory Thomas.
Gregory Thomas. Okay. I was.
Cool. So you
You got to the first thing. I was gonna make sure I had your name 100% right because I don't like to mess up people's names.
definitely, definitely, definitely. And then you got the art behind me, all this work that I did here.
Yeah, that's a good background.
Yeah, thank
I'm
you.
always I always struggle with naming art styles. So the one that's just to your right and above your shoulder, what like
Okay.
style is
This
that?
which one? Which one? This one?
Yeah.
Or okay. So my art style is cubism, but it's
Okay.
also expressionism. So it's like you got Picasso who does cubism, but I also had other artists that influenced me, like Edvard Munch. He's the painter of the Scream. You know that expressionist work, that emoji face.
Yeah, like where it's
Yes,
white and it's almost Grim Reaper ish in like from
there
here
you
out,
go.
but it's got the white and with the long elongated face.
There you go. That's exactly him. That's the guy who painted it. Not many people actually will know who actually painted it. He's a very underrated artist, but expressionism and cubism. So what you see here is just the combination of expressionism and cubism, where I would have I'll show shapes and then I'll show different perspectives
Yeah.
of art at the same time, like a hand will be here and there in different times at the same time. It's kind of how the concept of cubism.
It reminds me. I don't know if you've ever seen Face Off. It's basically like a special effects and makeup competition, and
I
one of
have.
their coolest ones was the expression. Like they had to choose from art styles and then create the makeups. And expressionism
Yeah.
and cubism were both art styles they used, and that was an awesome episode too. I like your art style though.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't say it's my own just
Well,
because well, what was you gonna say? Yeah, just
I
I
was
was
gonna
just
say, well, every artist is inspired by other artists. It's kind of one of the awesome things about being human is we get to build upon other people's. We get to like stand on the shoulders of giants.
yeah. And I think and that's interesting. See, the reason why my art style isn't really my own art style is because it's because I had to look at other artists at once. You know what I mean? I looked at Edvard Munch, I looked at Picasso, I looked at Dali Salvador, and over years they kind of combined into one. And I think that's one of the issues that most artists nowadays will have, especially when you look on social media and stuff. They don't have their own aesthetic. And that's something that the Art Institute really can't teach you. That's something that you have to learn for yourself. And you learn by looking at other artists, looking at what speaks to you, and eventually, like, that art style will kind of blend in. It'll kind of combine. Like, maybe I know one girl that's on TikTok, she paints ghosts. She paints
Okay.
like a sheet of ghosts and stuff, and it's always like an autumn theme. But the colors that she uses, black and brown, it's a lot of dark colors, which is their aesthetics.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So you got to look at what colors do you use, what colors do you like to use, and what subject matter you like to talk about and stuff. For me, my colors I always blend. I'm always using the color white. I'm always using water because I paint in acrylic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I paint in acrylic and I'm always using water. And so that kind of makes my art kind of have this airy, very bright, colorful, blended look that it took kind of years to make. I know Picasso said he said it took him, I think, 5 years to learn how to paint like Raphael. but a lifetime to learn how to paint like a child. And I
Yeah,
think that's kind of what he meant.
that's an interesting point because children do things. It's weird because as adults we somehow lose our childlike
Yeah.
creativity and that freedom, and it always
hmm
interests me is like how did we lose that and how can I get it back because it's just so much more fun.
I think I know how you can get it back. I think the issue is when an artist learns, when they get painting and stuff, they kind of fuse their adult world with their art.
Yeah,
And many other famous artists like, I think it's I call him Miro. John Miro. There's, I don't know, I hope I'm saying his name right. John
yeah,
Miro, but Paul Klee, Picasso, all these artists said paint like a child. And what they mean is if your child makes something for you, like a son or daughter, they draw something, that wonder is there. It's not just something, it's not like picking up a newspaper, you know what I mean? It's got this childlike wonder of innocence that
yeah,
I
unfiltered and
think,
unrestricted.
there you go. And I think that's what they mean when they say stuff like that. And to get that, honestly, that's tough because the question is, should you keep it or should you have your art adapt to your time scale?
It's an interesting
Ex-
point.
ex- exactly. Because the art I painted when I was little, I was looking more at the Renaissance type of art and Romanticism. And
Yeah,
over time, they became more and more abstract and more as I moved toward Cubism. And I think when I was first starting out, there was bright colors. And then as I got a little older, I started using dark greens and browns to reflect, kind of my well-being and type.
and I wonder too because you had mentioned that as you got older you moved more into the abstract, and I wonder if that's also more a brain development too because small children don't, as far as I know, don't have that abstract able to extrapolate and like see things that don't exist as well
Yeah.
as adults do. So I wonder as you, if your brain as it developed, if that didn't also influence your art.
Well, there's this whole giant debate against abstract art and the art from Renaissance. It's like a war going on here. They've got people who quote modern art, and I think there's this war against abstract art, and there's this like what's better, Renaissance or abstract? I think both are needed.
Yeah,
That's a tough question,
can you
and
even
I
say
think
one is better than the other? Because it's good to have both, isn't it? I'd rather have more art than less.
Well, I want to say one thing definitely that what the fascists believed back in World War II was that they didn't like degenerate art. So all these awesome artists, Paul Klee, even Edvard Munch, and John Miro, definitely John Miro. I know they absolutely brutalized Edvard back in that day. They thought that abstract art was degenerate. And for this, I say if we're having a society that's trying to force those ideals, then abstract art is a weapon against them. Surrealist art, we use that against them.
Yeah,
However, there's also a dark side to abstract art where it's money laundering. Most
that makes
people
sense.
don't. Yeah, most people don't recognize art world is just money laundering. I mean, America is just money laundering capital. It's just everybody wants to stop paying taxes, and
I don't
so
like paying taxes either. I mean,
yeah,
can you blame them? They take a lot.
or there's a diff, or there's a difference between someone who can only afford an apartment paying taxes and the rich who can afford to pay taxes, but they don't
Yeah.
want to pay them on their mansion. But to combat the superiority of somebody who wants to say only abstract art is superior, that's when we got to use Renaissance to combat that. It's like you got to have balance. You feel me?
Yeah, yeah.
You got to have balance. We can't have it more than one ways. Now you said the question when we grow up that do we does our mind change? Does it become more abstract?
Or at least our ability to comprehend the abstract. But something that occurred to me as I was asking that question, and that
Yeah.
my statement may be inaccurate, because children imagine things that are unreal and not real all the time. So
Hmm.
maybe abstract is not the right term that I have in my mind. It's creativity. Actually, here's a good question. So that we're both
Yeah.
on the same page, how would you define
Yeah.
abstract?
That is a good question. Anything that's not realistic looking.
Okay.
So basically anything that's not realistic. And because even Renaissance could have they could have concepts and ideals where it looks real, the figures look realistic, but the drama is almost abstract in their approach to capturing the mood of the scene.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which, and then by that definition, kids actually may, in many cases, have a stronger ability to do abstract, because I'm just imagining like a kid's drawing right now. Actually, again,
Yeah.
to Face Off, like we were talking about earlier, they had one episode where the inspiration for their makeups was by kids' drawings, and you look at the drawing, you're like, by the definition of abstract, is not real. That is abstract as all heck. Most of the drawings, like
Yeah.
there's like round creatures with stubby like four wings, things that there's nothing in our world currently that exists even remotely like it.
Exactly. So now you understand what the artist John Miro was trying to do with his paintings. He was trying to paint something childlike because he didn't want people to lose that wonder. You know what I mean? He didn't
Yeah.
want people to lose that wonder, and that's something that these artists Picasso and John seen in child artworks. When you're not attached, because I know this is the way I analyze it. Honestly, this is the way I analyze it. Um, there are times where I would be drinking a lot of alcohol because sometimes I drink, Moscato, wine and stuff, and it would impact my artwork.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I couldn't paint cubism while I was drunk. I would just be painting cloud paintings and whatnot. And
So
in fact, this artwork right here is a cloud painting. You can't really see it well, but I did the balloon. I always
yeah.
do the balloon from the clouds. A lot of those cloud paintings I did while I was kind of drunk. I would just because that's all I could paint,
Yeah.
because I couldn't focus on stuff. Now, that was when I was drunk, and then there was this time where my two uncles died in 2021, my favorite uncles. Um,
My apologies.
my yeah, yeah. Oh no, definitely. I definitely appreciate that because that one hurt. And I think that was the first time I experienced painting under loss like that. You see my colors are bright reds,
Yeah.
blues, and when they died, all I could paint was grays. I couldn't paint blues and stuff like that. I would only use grays. I mean, like it's like the life of my art just kind of sucked out of itself, and was replaced with gray colors. And then there's times where I would be angry. I would paint reds and yellows and blacks. So
Yeah.
I think our minds have color in them, and every definitely things that impact that, like politics, like loss,
Yeah.
loneliness, and
Emotions are
stuff.
powerful.
Exactly. And it impacts your art. And the reason why that is because they come from your subconscious. Everything comes from your subconscious. That means if you see a painting with colors blue and red and green in it, then if you was to take and travel in someone's mind, those are colors you're going to see, blue, reds, and greens and stuff
Yeah.
in it. And so for children, they'll do stuff that's abstract that as in the world that they see it. And that's what Picasso was talking about. When you're painting something pure, it's not affiliated with the troubles of the world. This is what they should be hanging in the art gallery.
Yeah.
You feel me?
That makes a lot of sense. And I
Hmm.
keeps, I mean, my brain keeps coming back to maybe my understanding of what they were trying to get across is that the art from children is completely unrestricted. Like, and I'm sure you understand this too, is when you go to write, sometimes we start self editing
Hmm.
ourselves so much that nothing gets on the paper. Now, if we just wrote like a
Right.
child, we'd just be pouring everything onto the paper unrestricted, and we can go and refine it later. But
Yeah.
it's keeping that creativity alive and not crushing it with, what's the word I want to use? Not so much
Crush
expectation, but expect social expectation.
impurity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure science has time and time showed the effects of PTSD on your art all the time. And the type of art that you make determined where whatever is in your mind, whatever you're thinking about is gonna show up on paper because it all comes from subconscious.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, the thing with the subconscious and the things with art is that e- whatever you're thinking, that's in your mind is so powerful that you can find it out in your art. You can even tell what type of gender an artist is simply by looking at the colors somebody uses because I've
Really?
actually noticed, yeah, I noticed that. So men tend to use it's like men tend to not see colors bright enough. So they'll make a red really red, they'll make a blue really blue. And I
Oh.
found that female artists tend to use colors, or they tend to see colors as too bright. So they'll kind of dull them down or they'll make them kind of look pastel. I've actually noticed that by looking at Georgia O'Keeffe's artworks, and you turn and look at Dolly Salvador's. You got the male and the female, and even though they're two different art styles, you can still tell between the two that their color palettes differ in different genders. I found that out. At least the question: Are men colorblind?
Or we're more. What occurred to me while you were talking about that is maybe women are more gentle and subtle in their use of color, and men
There
are
you
more
go.
bold and forceful, which is men tend to be more bold and forceful just in most interactions, and women are generally more
Mhm.
subtle and nuanced. And I wonder if
Yeah.
that carries over in a semi generality to art as well.
It sure does. It all comes from the subconscious. Um, and what's crazy is so many things you could tell. You could tell if someone has been through trauma. You can tell if somebody has PTSD. You can even tell somebody's sexual orientation by looking at the type of stuff that they make in their artworks and the objects that they use. You could tell things like if they were physically abused when they was little. I mean, FBI been looking at children's artworks for
Yeah.
years. And in my study of art and in my looking at, because I'm self-taught, so I looked at all these artworks, I looked at different artists, and I recognized that there's a pattern. And just like you said, just like I said when I used the gray colors when I went through Lost,
Yeah.
you see the painting where the artist has a bunch of gray colors and stuff. It means that they've experienced some loss, or at that moment they was actually experienced loss, or thinking about it. It all comes to the subconscious. It's
So
something we can't hide. Yeah.
that makes me an interesting question. What is your view then of something like charcoal art, where it's all in those darker shades?
There you
How
go.
does that tie in?
Well, it's also the artist. If the artists tend to use the medium that speaks to their soul. Like me, I have ADHD. I like to use acrylic because it dries fast. I tried oil.
Yeah,
I don't dry fast. I don't like oil. And somebody that wants darker moods will definitely use the charcoals. But if you're someone that is not really an anxious person, you're gonna struggle probably using charcoal artwork unless you were anxious and you didn't know about it.
yeah,
So people tend to gravitate toward their medium and stuff.
that makes a lot of
So,
sense. I
hmm
wonder,
in fact,
related to that then is the art that you enjoy. See, I'm not particularly artistic. I would say I'm incredibly creative in more of a problem solving way, but not so much in an artistic way. So
Yeah.
then, would you be able to relate like the kind of art that people enjoy with those same things? Like, if you're not particularly creative, but you enjoy certain kinds of art more than others, like I really like a lot of your colorful stuff, especially so above your left ear almost, where you've got like the half of a face with the bright red hair and the orange background. That one
Ah,
keeps
this
catching
one.
my eye. Yeah, up one
Yeah.
where it's with the, like the striped looking shirt there. Um,
this this one, Smug Wendy. I did this one, I think, in 2012.
yeah,
And there was this meme where everybody was talking about Smug Wendy and stuff. And it's funny you brought that one up. It's one person I said when I posted it on Imgur years ago, they said the perfect thing. They said, I both love this and hate this at the same time. Because it's got this forked tongue, it's got the sideways eye. I wanted to kind of
yeah.
make it look smug and stuff. And I think that best describes my art. They love it and hate it at the same time.
It evokes a reaction for sure between the
Yeah.
bright colors and then yeah, I had to minimize myself because I wasn't seeing the full image. The eyes. See, I would have never like myself. My brain doesn't like work in the rotated off style like that.
Oh,
How does when you're making something like that, does that just come to you? You just start sketching it out. How do you create something like that?
well, first let me just say I'm not an artist. I know you see the
I would beg
art.
to differ.
I know you see the art, but I'm not an artist. I'm a writer. I started painting when I was 14 based off a suggestion from my mom, you know. She said, "Why don't you paint your stories on canvas?" You know. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I just started doing that, and I started from humble beginnings, making stick figures when I was little, and my thing is like writing and whatnot. And then I just started making my paintings and stuff. Now, besides me saying, you know, Lord, help me with my writing, my stories, and recognition and stuff, the way I make my cubism is, I don't know. I think I have times where I would paint the eye. See, I would paint the eye like an almond,
Yeah.
and then I would do the face actually around the eye. You feel me? I would do
Yeah.
the face around the eye. And then I have my times where I would do the space sideways. I just get spontaneous with it. And I think the way you do it is you have to kind of see the world from a different angle. It's tough. It comes to you. When you practice and practice, it'll just come to you.
Yeah. So it sounds like you always start with like a focal element, either it be you said like an angle or an eye that you start and then you kind of craft it around it as and it kind of comes to you as you're developing the idea.
Yeah, and that's exactly kind of what I do here. I take the eye. I usually draw the eyes first. So I started with drawing the sideways eye here. I drew that one first, and then I did the sideways face. I did look at a reference. I looked at the Smug Wendy reference, and I just tried to do it in my own style. I traced this one out. You could probably still see the pencil works. I traced it out, and then I just kind of just did it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting variety between each of the paintings you've put up. Like each one has a bit of a different style to it. Like Smug Windy up there is pretty different than the one right below it, and then the one that's far all the way to your right. Um, yeah, that one, and
Yeah.
then the one over your left shoulder are have a similar like swooping head style, and the one in the middle
Yeah.
too. And then you've got up in the up like
Hmm.
high to your right. The
Hmm.
what style
The
is that?
this one,
Up over just a
this
touch. That one, yeah,
this this one. When when I'm painting women, I tend to like to have a the accurate face. I don't like to really make women look cubist. I
yeah,
like to have them keep their pure kind of form. with this round head and the neck and the hair. I usually make the men cubist and whatnot. Now these paintings came from different different time periods. I think this one definitely came from 2020 or 2019, 2020. And then this one is more a more recent one. I did this one this year. I would go from painting people to painting gangsters.
Yeah.
And I've gotten one that's down here that you can actually take a look at right here. I don't know if you can see it. That's my intense gangster. So this one is another gray painting I did where when I lost my uncles in 2021.
Yeah. And
So
did
I
you
would
fill the
paint.
color in later?
I what I do is I draw the outline first, and then I do the colors, and then I do the I do the shadings and whatnot in it. So this is an intense gangster one. I do the moniker that's war. You can see the moniker right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually do war in my art and stuff. And then I've also got it dotted in. Let me see if I could get this in real close. Let me see if I can. You will see the word war as well. It's you're gonna need a magnifying glass. That's the best I could do.
Yeah.
But that is I do dots where you'll see the word war in it.
That's interesting, like hidden touches. That
Yeah, I do the
painting,
hidden
that
touch.
one right there that you're holding, gives
Yeah.
me like that style. That one and the one that's similar to it feel like it'd be a really interesting style for like an animated show. Um, because they're different. I feel like you could tell a lot of different story both by their unique differences and then the
Yeah.
shapes of their there's a lot of expression that you could bake into like build into
Yeah.
that design.
Well, the story behind the intense gangster is so this was painted in 2021. Again, my uncles died and I was painting my painting started to become gray. This was actually when they were starting to change to gray. And as time went on that year, my colors would be more and more gray, more darker looking and whatnot. And I wanted because sometimes I struggle with anger. You know what I mean? Sometimes I could be prideful. Sometimes I could be narcissistic. I'm just gonna just be honest.
You're a
And
human like the
then
rest of us, huh?
yeah, and I reflect that in gangster paintings where I would paint them smoking cigars, gangsters. I bounce between the painting the working class where they'll be having the bowler hats and the brown suits, and I paint the gangsters, and that's what I did here. I want it. His hand is red because it reflects him being caught red-handed. I wanted him to look like he was both reacting to being the viewer catching him and also being shot. So it's like blood from him hurting and then blood from a gunshot wound. And I wanted him to look like he was falling back with the cigarette trailing all behind him. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and the gray and black and white is supposed to reflect a newspaper. And I wanted that, so it was like a headlines from the 1940s and whatnot. So that's the story behind the intense gangster.
That's really interesting.
It's
And I like the
it's
fact that you have a story behind them. That's what I find some of the most impactful art that I've ever seen has had a story behind it. It enhances each piece is enhanced because you understand what it means, the meaning behind it, why you did this and why you did that. It makes it more interesting to me.
yeah. I think art should have a story behind it. I think they should have a story. I tend to write about war, morality, and isolation and stuff like that. But I just kind of come up with the subjects that speak to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Speaking of which, the eyes in the female at the top right, the eyes are so striking. What's the story behind those? The more
The
I look at them, the
eyes.
more they like
Let me
draw
see.
me in.
Yeah, yeah.
They've
So
got a lot of depth.
this exactly. I think I was going through depression at that time, and over the time, the eyes started to become more and more red. Realism. I was focusing on trying to make eyes realistic. It's something about eyes that speak to the soul that I wanted to kind of get in there. My method is because this is a wood board. This isn't canvas. This is a wood board, and I paint the white. And I draw the eye out, and then I paint the white, and then I take and with a real thin brush, I'm talking, let me see, like, yeah, like this, a thin brush here,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Um, and I do the veins in the eyes and whatnot. In fact, you can see right here in the eye, right here, you can definitely see
that's
where
really
I do the
fine
vein.
detail.
Yeah, you could thank that brush for that. Um, I do the the veins in the eyes because I wanted them to. There's something about the color red in the eyes that speak to you. You know what I mean? And I think right here I used the pen for the corner right
Yeah,
here. Yeah, I used a pen. Sometimes I'll use a thin pen like a ballpoint pen and we'll get the veins and whatnot.
yeah. It's art is it's so interesting because there's really no wrong way to do it, and it's such a deep expression of each person and even if you take inspiration from somebody else, rarely is one person's art the same as another. There's always some nuance, some personalized difference to it.
Hmm. Well, it depends on who you ask. I've seen some amazing artists on Instagram, TikTok. Some of these artists are so awesome that I'm like, dude, these people need to be famous. Some of them are way better than me. I mean, they're
Yeah,
real good. And but I think the problem I see the most is cookie cutter art. And cookie cutter art is what you get when instead of trying to come up with your own style, you're just trying to make something that captures the most views, the most thumbs up, the most stuff like that. And the issue with that is you start to genericify your art. You know, it makes it generic. Where
yeah,
I've seen it. It's like cookie cutter. It looks like clip art. I think the issue is you're not having fun being an artist, are you? You know, when you're trying to get views and you see something that get enough views, it makes you not want to paint no more, not want to make no art. So you make it a certain way that everybody, the first thing you see is somebody. You make it so that what can catch the most views.
yeah. The thing is, the world today doesn't really require you to be seen by that many people. You've heard of 1,000 True Fans, I'm sure, right?
Which one? What'd you say?
1,000 True Fans. So
No.
it's I can't remember if it's a book or an article. It's well known by Kelly somebody, but
Hmm.
basically the idea is that to have a well off and perfectly like have enough money and success in the world, you really need about 1,000 people total to like your stuff enough to want to give you $5 to $10 a month every year, and you can live incredibly well off that. So really, if
I
you want to,
think Van Gogh would say otherwise.
well, see, but in his time, it wasn't as easily accessible. Today, like, you're in Georgia and I'm in Mexico right now, and we're having a great
Mm.
conversation across barriers. Like, the technology we have today has made things more easily accessible than ever before. It's become easier to connect with people in every corner of the world than it ever has been before, which just gives us opportunity that we didn't have before.
That is such an interesting, yeah, it's interesting, very interesting. We have a lot of technology and whatnot that we can do this. We can advertise our stuff. However, for the most part, I feel isolated. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? I feel isolated while I'm where people in New York and in the Met are dreaming about how are things down south in Georgia. I'm in Georgia thinking about, man, if I had my art in New York, I'd be famous, because America has so much individualism to the point that it's hyper individualism.
Yeah,
It's isolation.
it really
You know what I
has.
mean? It's
Um,
isolated. And this is exactly what all my writing has been about for the past couple of years. Isolation. I know I've written my novel Prologue, and isolation and whatnot. It's people are separate. It feels like America is like an open air prison where, yes, you're free to go wherever you want. Yes, you can do this, but in retrospect, you can't. You go to another state, who knows you? You know what I mean? You talk
yeah,
to people, do they want to talk back? You go online, you try to type in comments, you go and no one responds back. I struggle to find places for my art and my writing. I post a picture on TikTok and I get 2 likes, maybe 10 likes. I can't even get past 100, I can't
yeah.
even get 50. It's
Online is
like,
difficult because you miss that face to face interaction, and let's be honest, face to face, even video to video is better than text. But even this is missing. Like I can't put my hand on your shoulder, and
yeah,
it's not the same. So I
it's
totally
not the
get that.
same. Exactly. It's definitely gotten worse since the pandemic. It's just gotten worse and whatnot. I think what causes that can be contributed to the COVID and the pandemic, because the way COVID attacks you, it causes brain fog. People are sick. Some people might have caught the virus 2, 3 times. It's starting to mess with them. You feel me? It's starting to mess with their mind. Some people lost their families. I remember I went to church one time and it was Mother's Day. We went to
Yeah.
church on Mother's Day and they had a candle light for anyone who has lost their mother. If they wanted to, they could come up. And the whole church came up. I mean, it must have been like 80% of the church didn't have a mom. And these people were just broken. They was crying. They was feeling this way. And that kind of spoke to me. Maybe the rest of the world is like that. Because when you're depressed, you don't want to talk to nobody.
And that's exactly when you need to be around people.
Exactly.
I totally, for myself, when I've been depressed or in a bad way, I tend to separate myself from the world. And it's like the exact
Exactly.
opposite of what we need. We need more interaction with people, but we don't feel worthy of that. Or at least for me, I didn't feel worthy of that interaction because I had no self worth. And the less self
Yeah.
worth, you then continue hiding yourself away, and it becomes worse and worse and worse. It's a
Yeah.
nasty cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I'm depressed, everything changes. My art, my writing, everything changes. You don't want to be around people. I mean, I've got family. I don't got no friends. I got one friend in California, Steven,
You got at least two
and
friends. I'm over here in Mexico.
well, oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. Well, hey, it's always good to have friends. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're a friend. But when you're depressed, you don't want to be around nobody.
Yeah.
You want to
For you, when you're
isolate.
depressed, does it? So I'm curious if what I feel is similar to what you feel. When you isolate yourself, why do you isolate yourself? If you don't mind talking
Uh,
about it,
no,
I
no,
know
I'm
that's kind of
definitely.
personal.
This is what I live to talk for. I live to talk about my art and stuff, and I love analyzing it on a psychological level and whatnot, because that's how art should be approached. Well, when I lost my uncles, we'll just start with that one. When I lost them, I had family. We were all going through it, so I had my family to lean on. However, when I was going through depression, like maybe I was feeling like lonely and whatnot, I didn't want to talk with nobody because I couldn't. You feel me? I feel like I'm tired of being around people. Excuse me. When you're tired of being around people, you it's like it's something you can't control. It's like you shrivel up, like the flower that closes up at night. There's no warmth, there's no sun. So when you do that, it makes it difficult to be around people, you know. But when you're happy, you're around people, you're talking, and it's fun. It's like day and night.
What do you think made you feel like you were tired of people? What kind of pulled that energy out of you? Do you know?
Hmm. Well, let's see. Several things. I guess, I like to be famous right now. I like to get my art and my books in the theaters. And when you work so hard on it and you
Yeah.
haven't gotten that far, that makes you isolate. I mean, you could go to therapy all you want, but if they're not taking you to Steven Spielberg, or then what can they tell you, And it's like when you're looking for like companionship, like you want to be married with a woman and all that stuff, if you got a
It's
therapist
rough out
talking to
there.
you, unless they got somebody that's single that's looking for someone, then what can they tell you, You take meds, I mean, I've taken Paxil, all that stuff. If you need it, you need it. For me, they had me sit down in the chair and not know what to do with myself next. I didn't feel better. I didn't feel good taking that stuff. I felt better when I going cold turkey. I've been going cold turkey for like, I think, a decade and a half now. The question you said was, what brings that out?
Yeah. What kind of
Life,
sucks that energy out of you, making you want to feel like people are too
life.
much?
Oh, life, man. I think the feelings of failure, the feeling of not being able to make it. For me, I've been jobless for 5, 6 years, struck, and that's with a bachelor's degree, So I went into college. I went to Strayer University. I got this degree I worked hard on. There's only two people in my family that's got a degree. That's my oldest sister, Kim,
Yeah.
and me. Not even my mom and dad have degrees. My mom dropped out when she was in high school. And so she said, I need you to get your education. And now I got my education. And now I'm looking for a work, and I can't find work anywhere. They're laying off people in in IT. No, I put in like so many job applications and pay for a lot of money for a good resume, shop that around. Nobody wants to hire, ghost jobs everywhere. So that feeling of failure brings that out. When you get like that, you're like, you don't feel like going anywhere. You don't feel like
Yeah.
doing
You're
nothing. You
constantly
feel
getting
me?
beaten down.
Exactly. So that feeling of rejection definitely brings out the worst out of people. I think the feeling of loneliness also brings out the worst. Some of the people that make some of the most striking movies, striking novels, dealt with isolation and illness, mental illness, depression. All that stuff brings out the best in people without them even realizing it. I
Yeah,
think,
because you can kind
yeah,
of use it to fuel creativity in a different perspective.
exactly. And I hate to say you have to suffer for your art, because do you? That's a question people ask. Do you got to suffer? Or can you make art that's good? Because I've made art happy and I've made art sad. And I appreciate the art I made happy. The art I made sad, I kind of hide away because you don't want to see it. You feel me?
Why not?
Well, let's see. What when I made my art with grave paintings that remind me of my uncle's passing, I hide that stuff. I don't put that stuff out, because when you look at it, you feel sad again. And you don't want to, I don't want to experience sorrow like that. So I find myself hiding it, actually.
What if what if other people need that art to help them feel like they're not alone, because then by just looking at your piece of art they know somebody else has felt what they're feeling.
And that's exactly why I keep it. I keep the artworks that I've made when I was feeling down and sad, because I know even though I don't want to look, might not want to look at them, it's important timestamp. You know what I mean? And I guess I keep it. I keep it. With that being said, you got to understand that's a piece of you. It's blood, sweat, and tears over
Yeah.
here for the artist. And for them, it's tough for them to revisit that. So I can't revisit it. Others will be on the outside looking in on that.
Hmm. That's an interesting. It makes me wonder if it would be worth experimenting with sharing those pieces and the story behind them, because it seems like you said earlier, a lot of people,
Mhm.
it's the world feels very isolating right now, and part of that is just because, well, I'm going to use Instagram for an example.
Yeah.
Instagram is very not real. A lot of what you see on there isn't real.
Social media is not real.
Yeah, it's this beautiful, impossible picture of somebody, and they didn't even look like that the 5 seconds before or after or even during that photo, and yet it's
Yeah.
constantly what's put in front of you. Whereas the perspective of your pieces, especially those deeply painful and emotional pieces, is they are real, and the story behind them is real, and it gives people something beyond perfection to know that they aren't alone in the world, and know that other people also struggle. They also feel deep pain. They also feel isolated. So I'm wondering if have you shared much of those, because you might find that
I
it
have.
really.
I've shared it, and then my family starts worrying if it's excuse me, if it's dark, if it's too dark, my mom will rip it up. She'll throw it in the trash.
That's unfortunate.
Cause yeah, because she wants me to think happy thoughts. You know what I mean? Um,
But what if
it's
that's
like this.
your productive way of taking those really dark thoughts, getting them out of your brain where they're doing harm, and onto canvas where they can do good?
Well, when I make a bad art, when I make an art that's got that deep, because I mean, it's like this. It's like this. I mean, I think I've painted expressionist works where they're self portraits with bleeding eyes. You know, it's just a self portrait with bleeding eyes and stuff. I put some of that online. I get 1 or 2 likes. When I put something happy online, I'll get a bunch more likes. Not only do I get low likes on the dark pieces, but my family start texting me saying, "What's wrong?" You know, they start worrying, and that's not what I'm about.
Yeah,
You know,
I
I'm not
get that.
about that worry. I'm not about that. You can pour your heart and soul out to somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean that they'll receive it, you
Yeah,
know?
or listening to think, maybe
And
thinking
then
about
this, yeah,
themselves.
I mean, I pour my heart and soul out in every art, every writing and stuff. And he don't see me on, you don't see me with $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the people that need to see your work sometimes overlook it, and then the people that don't need to see your work don't see it. I guess I don't know. It's strange. It's just it's just strange. You know what I mean? Because yeah, it's just strange. It's just strange.
Gave me a bunch of ideas. It's interesting. I wonder if it's I mean, the likes are sort of important, but it kind of depends on what your goal is. So maybe we should talk about that, because you've mentioned, and this was a question I wanted to ask you before. Is kind of what would your vision of like a perfect life, or like what is your vision if you could look, like, just wave a magic wand, look into the future, and have the life you want? What does that actually look like? Because you mentioned like being famous, being a millionaire. What does that look like to you?
You said that my idea of a perfect life.
Yeah.
A bunch of women on each arm, millions of dollars, Rolls Royce, mansions. But then again, that comes with its problems, doesn't it?
Yeah, and
I
then
mean,
what do you do with that?
well,
Like what? Let's just pick the women for example. What does a dozen women on your arms? What? How does that make your life better in a meaningful way? I mean, it's probably
an
satisfying. It's
active
going to be
sex life.
satisfying for, yeah, but it'll be satisfying for a little bit. But does it really move the needle?
Oh, it moves the needle, man.
It moves the needle. I mean, it'd be very pleasurable. Let's put it that way. No doubt, pleasurable.
All
But
right,
does
I'm gonna
it?
be serious. I'm gonna be serious. I'm gonna be serious. I just had to get that out there.
Yeah,
No,
no worries.
my idea for a perfect life, honestly, is to keep my connection with God. I know that sounds corny, but I'm a
Not at
Christian
all.
and it's just my faith. That's just me, you know. Do that. I would love to have paid off all my college debt because I'm not a thief. I pay my debts, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And that hurt that I wasn't able to pay my debt and get a good job. I want a good job. I want a house, want a wife, some kids, and I want people talking about my art and my writing. I want to see my books in movies. I want to see my art in galleries. I want to see all this good stuff with a wife and kids, good head on their shoulders, and make my mom and dad proud and my family proud. I know there's definitely some family members I would love to help out. I don't know if you know Nadja Nicole Pennington.
Not
Nadja
familiar, no.
Nicole, well, she was on The Voice years ago. She's a singer. She has her own radio show in Delaware, the Nadja Nicole show. I think that's the name of her show. But she has kids. She's a singer. She's always wanted to make it like that. Excuse me. She's got a good husband. I like to help them out, you know, with whatever. I always want to help them out. And what I heard about my uncle, Uncle Jimmy, which was my the one that passed in 2021, was my favorite. He was one of my he was the ones that inspired the monocle, everybody's favorite uncle, which is what I go by in my writing.
Yeah. I was
To
wondering
love
if
my
one of your
family,
uncles had inspired that because I saw the
and he
connection
did.
there.
And he had gotten dementia. And they put him in this retirement home. I wanted to get him out and get him into a nicer home with closer to family. I wasn't able to do that. You know, my dream was to get my book out there, to get out there and get them out. You know what I mean? And I wasn't really able to do that. But um, yeah, that my idea would be to just make my family proud, you know, and be successful. I think that's my perfect vision for what a good life is. You know,
Yeah. That makes a lot of
you see any
sense.
flaws in that?
No, there's no flaws in any vision. It's just refining it and making it really in very clearly in your mind because the clearer it is, the easier it is to strive after and work on. There was a question I had that when you mentioned your art, what for it to how do I want to phrase that? You want your art in your movies and your stories to be in front of a lot of people. What do you want your art to change in their lives that makes it so attractive to them? Like, let me see if I can clarify that
Mm,
because it's kind of
it's
a
a very
wonky
good
question.
question. I
Yeah,
think I understand.
go for it. Because I feel like I didn't
Yeah.
phrase it very well,
What do
but
you?
maybe you
What do I
understand.
want my art to change?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna talk about my art and then I'm gonna talk about my book. For my art, I want people to analyze like this. It's like this. We have a lot of people that are money laundering in art galleries. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not be coy here. You know what
Okay.
I mean? We have a lot of that going on. And I think they're using art wrong. I want people for instance, the FBI should be in art galleries, studying art like philosophy and psychology, studying all these different artists, writing books about them. I want people to analyze paintings and art from a psychological standpoint. I want them to look at it and study them in a way that can connect not just with the artists on the personal level, more intimate level, but with the viewer as well. Because the mindset of the people back in the Renaissance era is important the same way it was the people us here. You could tell everything about that in art by looking at the subject matter, by looking at the colors they use. All that is important. And I don't think we're studying art enough like that. We're just making art to be making art. But I think we need to be analyzing art from a psychological standpoint, from a philosophical standpoint, and from a standpoint that speaks in a way that we can jot down. You feel me? Us analyzing everything there.
That
And in my writing,
I was going to add
I
to that
want,
before we move on to the writing. That
yeah,
sounds awesome. Like, I don't know that I've seen a channel where somebody, like, I'm just thinking like YouTube, where somebody
mm,
goes into art and just kind of like breaks it down, looks at the inspiration, the philosophy, the
yeah,
individual pieces. That sounds like something I enjoy watching to like get, because you've got a way better eye for art than I do, and to
yeah,
hear and listen to you speak is enjoyable, and describing things and what you see in it, that
yeah,
could be a really fun, it could be fun for you to do, and it would also help you achieve that goal, is making a channel all about, and it doesn't even always have to be your own art, it could be lots of different people's art, and getting your
yeah,
perspective on it.
yeah.
That would be,
You know,
I'd watch that.
you know what? The thing I go on YouTube all the time. I'm someone that's never stopped wanting to learn.
Yeah.
And the issue with social media, the issue with YouTube is I'm not learning anything on YouTube. I don't, I see a lot of people talk about stuff, a lot of stuff. I know there's this art channel called The Canvas. He's very interesting. He approaches the way he talks about art, guy on there, he talks about art in a way that analyzes it from different perspectives. That's one. And I feel like art channels, they kind of do what I would call, they give the Norman, what was it, the Patrick Bateman, Psycho, the Patrick Bateman definition, and where he was describing a tip to be square, but he was only talking about what the reviewers were saying. He was only talking about what the song, he never said anything about what the song meant to them. It's the same way with art. They don't really say what the art means to them personally, or describe it from a deep psychological meaning like that. They just kind of say what everybody has always been saying. The same art they've been talking about in high school is the same art they're talking about now.
Yeah.
It's boring. I'm not learning nothing. It's baby boomer fuel.
And it might
It's
be
just,
your opportunity, because like something that stuck out to me is when you said you're not learning anymore, and it might be because you've reached the point where there's only so much you can learn before you have to start
I hate
teaching to
that.
learn more. So,
I hate that. Yeah, I hate that. I don't want to hit a roadblock with learning.
well, so
I've
the
actually,
roadblock you've hit in this, I could be wrong, but the roadblock you've hit that from what I've talked to some pretty really intelligent people, but there's a point where you can only learn so much on your own, and to reach the next level of understanding and learn more, you have to take what you know and start teaching it to other people. And then when you start doing that, you, by interacting with these other people and getting their questions and everything, you have to learn more to be able to answer it, and it brings your level of understanding up another level. It gives you a lot more that you can learn, because now you have to learn and be able to teach from a different perspective.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
it makes perfect sense. I've had a podcast on my blog where I've actually analyzed art. I've actually just talked about art. One thing I talked about art and writing. One thing I could tell you is there's some kind of link between narcissism and eyes. It's something up with, so I'm just to talk about one podcast I talked about,
Yeah.
where when you see most of something about narcissistic artists, preferably Picasso, they love to have an emphasis on the eyes. You always notice the eyes. They're usually always big, they're always noticeable. um Even Anthony Hopkins, he's an artist. Not many people know that actor from the Silence of the Lambs is an artist. You look up his works. I've talked about most of his works, but I could tell the narcissism in his works by the way he always has large eyes. And the reason for that, and the psychological reasoning behind that, is just how a narcissist likes the attention. It's behooving that they would love to have the attention even from their paintings. They like their paintings to watch them the same way they like others to give them their attention. I found that out by looking at it, analyzing artists, reading their art stories and stuff, and looking at their lifestyle, life story, and stuff. The only thing is, SoundCloud costs money, and I just wasn't able to keep up with that payment. So unfortunately, my podcasts they took them away. I mean, all I gotta do is find the funds. I'll be able to get them up again, but
You still
that
have the
is tough.
files?
Oh, I still got the files. They could come up. It's just they'll come up one day. They'll come back up again. I've talked about a lot of stuff.
Well, I was thinking like, well, YouTube's free, and something that could be really interesting that you might enjoy too, because you do feel like you've got a bit of a people person in you,
Yeah.
and something I've been playing with, and I haven't done much myself, but because what you're talking about, like even the narcissistic thing about the eyes, I was like, I'd never heard that. That's interesting to me. You could do
Exactly.
things like lives on YouTube and Twitch, and even if it's just you by yourself on there, you could just launch into a topic you want to talk about, and if somebody pops in, now you got a conversation with somebody.
Yeah. That's my dog barking. Yeah, my dog's barking. But
Yeah, no
my
worries.
dog's barking. Give me a second. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
give me a
funny as your
second.
mic doesn't pick it up at all.
Oh, it doesn't?
Nah,
Oh, it doesn't pick it up. Okay, cool. So, okay, yeah. And that's the beauty of analyzing art from a psychological standpoint. In fact, you can use dream because it all comes from the subconscious. You can use dream dictionaries to analyze things that are in your art, and whatever the dream dictionary says, that object means, it would mean the same thing in the painting as well.
interesting.
And yeah, exactly, because it all comes from the subconscious. It all comes from the mind. There's nothing you can hide there. And I learned that looking at the eyes. I've actually learned the link between that. And this is the issue with YouTube. YouTube doesn't care. I mean, I like YouTube to be more scholarly. It's not scholarly like I want it. They're probably gonna put a bunch of ads in your YouTube videos because they are concerned with the ad revenue and whatnot. And I have my videos. I posted some art videos. I'm just not able to garner the audience I'm able to garner as fast as I wanted, or as fluently as I wanted, using the platform. And I guess that takes more configuring and whatnot. I've been on YouTube
Iteration.
for years, iteration. Uh, it almost leads you to believe, is the dead internet theory real? You know, because I go here, I go there, I post there, give cards out, and it seems like people don't come by like that, like a ghost town. You know, we need more people. America's not scholarly enough like I need it to be. I need it to be scholarly. You
If it
feel
was
me?
more scholarly, what would it change for you? How do you mean? Like,
People would be reading stuff, they'd be analyzing art, they'll be doing all that type of stuff, reading books and art and stuff. Instead, what we have is working class syndrome. Not that there's nothing wrong with that. You go, you work, you come home. That's it. That's the lifestyle.
well,
There's
part of that's
no,
because people are in the schools teach people that's the only option.
but it's not. And now we're living in an age where they're taking work from you. You can't even work. So it's just at home isolation. It's like prison. These kids nowadays, these teens, they go to school and then they come home. It's like prison. They don't go nowhere. And that stuff affects your mind. Words can't describe how bad that is on your mind. You're not reading. You're not invested in art. You're not talking with people. You're just, what are you doing? Staring at the four walls all day? This stuff is
Or a screen.
that's dangerous. You won't live to see 64, doing stuff like that. You gotta fight it. You gotta find a way to get that out there and learn. And I'm constantly scrolling YouTube, finding whatever I can learn off of. I refuse to believe I hit a dead wall, brick wall.
There's a. Have you ever heard of Trent Shelton?
I've heard of Shel Silverstein, but
So Trent Shelton, he's I would describe him as the modern master of perspective. And why I bring that up is because you've used a specific word that keeps making me think of him, and it's prison.
uh-huh.
And I've got two quotes from him, and I'm gonna try not to butcher them, but I've got a short 20-minute video I can send you that might really, it helped me see the world in a different way.
Yeah.
But one of his most powerful quotes is that your perspective can be either your prison or your power. And he goes into more depth in the video, but it made me think that perspective is really interesting because we all get to choose it. And the next thing he said that really resonated with me was that if you want better meanings in life, you have to create better meanings. It's a shoot. I butchered the heck out of that. Give me 2 seconds to pull this up because it is
I
way
mean, I
better
think I
than
get it. Yeah, you can pull it up, but I think I definitely get it.
Here we go. If you want to
There you
live
go.
a more meaningful life, create better meanings in life. And what he means by that is everything that happens, we get to choose what it means. The example he used from his own life was that when his mom died, yes, objectively that was awful, painful, and terrible. But
Mhm.
the meaning he chose to give it was something empowering that drove him forward, lifted him up. But
Well, yeah, that's nice. Let me put it in this perspective, man. What means a lot to a deer may have a different meaning to a lion, you
yeah,
know. Now, if we put a deer in charge of everything, they'll probably make a world that's not suited for the carnivores and the lions. And if we had a world where the lions were in charge of everything, they'll make a world not suited for the deers and whatnot. And lions can't live without the deers. So if there's one that disappears, it affects everything. So we gotta learn what meaning matters the most. You feel me? What matters? I think this is the part where we start to go into my writing. Am I right?
yeah, go
Where
for it. Yeah, what matters to
yeah.
you?
So
That's the really good question.
well, what matters? I think what matters to me is morality, good versus evil and whatnot and stuff like that. I think the best thing to do is to kick this off with the topic of what Martin Scorsese was saying about Marvel and what is it called theme park ride movies. We have two sides. It's almost like classism. We've got excuse me, I'm sorry about that. But
No
we've
worries.
got we've got Marvel movies, Disney movies, and then we've got excuse me, Silence of the Lambs type of movies and movies like that, Martin Scorsese movies. And the question is, what's art? Which one deserves to be here and whatnot? Now, I've talked about The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and whatnot, and that's a movie that is not a Disney. It's not a Disney movie, not a Marvel movie. It talks about dark topics, things like rape and whatnot. I don't deal with any of that stuff in my writing. Just because if it angers me too much, I'm not going to touch
Yeah.
it. But they touch it, and the question is asked: is it's what the writer wants to talk about, the producers want to talk about, but is it what the audience wants to see? You know, like somebody was to go on a first date with somebody and they go see this movie because they heard it's a critically acclaimed, the critics are talking about it, and they're sitting through a 2 4 minute rape scenes, and it's gonna make that date jacked up. I guess you can kiss the French kissing the girl at the end, goodbye. you know or I could go and see Deadpool and Wolverine, and
Is that out
we
yet?
go see that. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's out. It's coming out,
Yeah,
but
I
we
want
go
to see
see
that because
that.
it looks funny.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point I'm trying to make. You see that, and then you go see a dinner, go get a dinner, and then you'll get to kiss, and you get to keep talking with the girl. And we got the artists who are against that. They're saying it's a theme park ride. We never stop to ask what the audience wants and what is necessary.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely looked at how the quality of the movies have gone down Um, it's definitely gone down, and the reason why it's gone down is because some would say woke culture and whatnot. My response to woke culture is, if your ideas of woke is a black woman is a lead, then to me that's racist. That's fascism. You don't like you're saying that's the problem.
I think it may be
And
more
but
that it feels, in many cases, forced. Like a lot of modern, let's use Disney for
they'll
example.
say
They're
that.
not writing good characters. They're just writing characters to fill a role.
Yeah. Well, we say that, they say that the black woman lead seems forced and whatnot, but I guess they
It's
forgot
more just
about Pam
I think it's
Grier.
probably just because the character was poorly written rather than it just
Yeah,
because it
for
was a black woman.
yeah. Well,
That it's more
they
of a disservice in that case.
yeah, it is. But they've forgotten about Pam Grier being a lead. Like she doesn't exist anymore. They forgot that the Catwoman was black.
Or like the original Star Trek, the Lieutenant Uhura. She was a
Yeah.
hugely like she actually Star Trek back that was in the '60s, I think. She was
60s.
granted groundbreaking as a black female lead, but it was also a well written
Hmm.
show, and I think that's part of the difference.
Exactly.
Things were
And that's the
written with good
thing.
characters back then, and now we're just kind of
Exactly.
forcing things for instead of writing good
Exactly.
characters who happen to be X, Y, and Z.
And this is the thing. We leave politics. We turn off the news. We go to the movies to see the movie. We
Yeah,
don't come. We hear about Trump, and then we hear about politics, and we hear about all this stuff, and then we leave all that, and we come to the movies, and then we have it crammed down our throats that
yeah,
way.
we're trying to
You
leave the
know.
dumpster fire at home,
Yeah, exactly.
not
And
find it again at the movies.
if I wanted politics, I would just go to politics.
Yeah,
You feel me? And this is an art. This is an art when you're doing it like that. It's propaganda.
that's a
It's
good
it's
distinction.
it is. It's propaganda, and it begs the question: who's running? Who's running the show here? Is it politicians? Because a politician is a politician. There's a difference between an artist and a politician. You know what I mean? We have a politician that talks politics. We have an artist talk art, and
Well, let's
we're
be honest. Politicians
forgetting.
don't seem to be knowledgeable about much of anything.
Yeah,
It's like, what
and
skills
so
do most of them actually have?
well, politics, yeah. But the thing, and so I look online though, and I figured, so I'll just go to the indie writers. But as I'm going on sites like Inkit, even Reddit, and whatnot,
Reddit gets wild.
uh, yeah, Reddit. That's a story for another time. but but I see a lot of them. They write smut. Smut. It's like what smut is. It's it's just like it's erotica. That's the best way to put it. It's not taken seriously. Erotica. You got a lot of people that talk that basically make Twilight, um, wannabe Twilight writing and all that stuff.
They
If
sacrifice
that's what you
quality of story and characters
for
for,
quantity and
well, also like
fetishism.
more that quick satisfaction that comes from smut-like material.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're not writing anything that's going to make people smart.
Or
And
think.
so, yeah, and that's the thing. When you read a book, you're supposed to be feeling smarter. You're not supposed to be feeling dumb. It's no offense, but people can't. It's tough to write a novel where it's I just feel like it's smut. It's just I don't feel like it's serious. And so that's kind of where I what was you gonna say? He's
I was just thought occurred to me because as you were talking, something you could almost classify smut as, are the characters in the story something you would admire and aspire to, or are you
there
just
you go.
seeking it for pleasure?
There you go. And when you look at all this stuff, it comes in by the boatloads. It's buku smut in here, everywhere. Why? It's everywhere, all over the place. And then you realize why the quality is going down in the theaters. And this is the thing. It's a lot of people at the top. just the clientele, just to say, it's mostly that type of clientele where they're interested in teen romance and whatnot, teen romance, young adult and stuff, and to the point that we have a disconnect between what Hollywood wants and what the people that are in charge want. Hollywood wants action. Hollywood wants something deep. Hollywood wants something that they could sink their teeth into, but that goes against the ideals of the people in charge of the writing sphere, the ones that mostly be writing smut and whatnot, and we forget the art. We forget the knowledge. You open up a book, you're supposed to read knowledge, and this is what brings me to my novel chronologue. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is my book. Yeah, so this is chronologue, my first self-published book. Um, chronologue is a sci-fi dystopian based in the 23rd century future. It's about AI and robots trying to take over the world and turn people into machines. And so just to tell a quick story about it. Basically in the future, in the year 2257, AI has taken over everything. AI has they've taken people's jobs. People use them to drive cars around. People mostly work from home. When out of nowhere, this AI threat called the Avalon Republic of Machines, it self-replicates itself. It creates itself, and they see humanity, they want to turn people into machines. They see people, they see them as inferior, and they want to create a world where they turn people into machines and machines kind of run everything. And so there's a big war going on in chronologue and whatnot. And to the on top of that, there's another threat called super age. So super age is it's a virus. It's called like the everything virus. It infects everything. It infects objects. It infects people. It's something doctors can't stop. And so it's in order to beat that, they came up with something called Metalite, which is nanochip or nanochip technology that they like put in bodies and whatnot to try and defeat it. It's like it just makes us immune to the super age,
Yeah.
and it
On
changes our
that
DNA.
subject, what made you choose Super AIDS as the name of the mega virus?
Well, I wrote it in 2019, and that was the most damaging thing I could think of is super age. You know what I mean? The only thing that could make AIDS worse is if it goes airborne. And so I made it like that. And so we've got that metalite in our bodies, which is like a machine. But the problem in this is now that we have a machine inside our bodies, Avalon is able to hack people as though they were machines. And so now they're bringing the dead back to life. Anything that has metalite in them, they're able to hack us and to like this they could like hack people and turn them into like this unkillable zombie because the machines are controlling them. And the machines is all throughout your body. It's a nanochip. So, and the thing about chronologue is I had written this back in 2019. And in my book, I talked about pandemic, I talked about lockdowns, I talked about curfews, and I talked about the airborne virus and all that. I even talked about things like Jehovah Witness being stopped from having church services and whatnot, but cops were stopping them. And then enter 2020, and the COVID crisis happened, which turned my novel into something real.
Yeah.
It was so scary; it almost made me not want to write. But the
Yeah,
thing
especially
about
having written that right before then, right? You're seeing
yeah,
everything come to life and you're like, "Oh, no."
yeah. And the thing about this is 2019, I was 27. I came this close to joining the 27 club because I was so sad and depressed. It was a year of uncertainty and rejection. It was my first novel. I never held a book, my own book in my own, in my life, you know what I mean? I've never held my own book. And I had to pay to get this thing, I had to pay to get a book interior designer, proofread it, and all that stuff. And it was uncertain. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get it published. Lo and behold, I published it on my mother's birthday, September 3rd, in 2019. So out of that whole entire year of uncertainty, God kind of came through, and I was able to get that book out, And then 2020 happened, which blew me away, made
Yeah.
some stuff real. So the thing I'm trying to like, what's my point at? Where am I getting at? Am I just gloating? No, the only reason why I wrote my book, excuse me, is because I'm not trying to advocate against AI. I want
Yeah.
AI. You look at the world and you see things. Have they really changed since the 1970? I mean, yeah, we've got cars, and then we got the cell phone and the internet, and then that's it. I mean, we don't have flying cars. We're not having bases on the moon. And I see a stagnant world that I'm disappointed in. I'm trying to get them to move toward AI. I'm trying to move them toward robots. I like to have robots around. I like AI, but I also talk about the dangers of AI, and I talk about stuff involving just snippets of AI and whatnot like that that I want people to learn from and focus on. And I think that's what books should be about. Something people
Yeah.
learn from,
Where the
even if
characters
it's fiction.
are something that you can aspire to, and that there is something positive to be gained from the lessons. And to tie into that,
Yeah.
I've started to think recently that our media does more to shape people's minds and their values than any even history. And I'll give you an example that might make sense. Is I've noticed one of my strongest characteristics is just like honesty and integrity. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of that came from, have you ever heard of Horatio Hornblower?
Say again.
Horatio
Horatio.
Hornblower. Hornblower. It's basically it's a set of novels set in like the Napoleonic War era of Britain, and
Hmm.
he starts as a low level officer, but the story, he was a character. He definitely had flaws, but there was a few qualities about him that are something I think everybody can aspire to, and that would be
Yeah.
one of them. Back then too, I think honor and integrity were more sought after, more valued. And to that same point, like you're saying with your book, you're trying to tell.
Now
You're,
people seek money laundering.
yeah. Well, and you're trying to just explain how things could go wrong if we don't do them appropriately, but in a fun and
Exactly.
interesting way that gets people to think while also
Exactly.
enjoying themselves.
Yeah, my book chronologue, it acts science can be it could be if you do it wrong, it could become dark science. I mean, there's cloning in my novels. However, they're cloning soldiers to try and fight the Avalon machines so fast that clones were coming out wrong. There was a scene where clones were coming out with no eyes, or they were coming out deformed with no mouth and no facial features, or their clone coming out having grandma seizures and whatnot
Yeah.
because they didn't keep their science in check. They rusted out. And then I talk about actually this I talk about how because of the metalite in people's bodies that they made this new weapon called data bombs, which they're actually able to use the network as a weapon to actually pinpoint and create digital radiation from the sun. And it's like the e-earther, and they're able to actually pinpoint where they want an atom bomb to attack, and instead of dropping it where destroys everything, they'll hit the digital radiation, and it'll only attack the things that have a certain barcode, which is in the metalite. So they could destroy weapons, they could destroy clothing, because metalite is in everything to
Yeah.
try and stop the everything virus. And so stuff like that is what people read warns people of the dangers of technology and whatnot. And we have a
Inappropriate use
world,
of
yeah,
technology.
it just seems like people want to move their world toward dangers, you know, and that's because we're not investing in education. We're not investing in research And when I see smut, it's alarming because we're talking about World War III, and you're writing smut.
It's probably for a lot of people, the world seems
Yeah.
out of their control, so they look to smut to take them away from that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. It's just that there's more to life, you know?
Yeah,
And that's the dead. A lot of sci-fi gets a bad rep for being boring. I didn't want it to be boring and whatnot. I wanted it to be kind of interesting. Um, but yeah,
it definitely the
that's
first I got through the read the first two chapters, and it definitely sets the stage. It's rough. It's a rough world.
well. Explain to me, because I like to hear what people say about my novel. What was the first two chapters about for you?
It was the first two chapters are heavy. There's a lot there. The first chapter especially establishes. I almost need to reread it because it establishes so much of the technology that it's it's hard to wrap your head around how crazy the technology is in that world and what they can do with
Yeah.
it.
So my concept for chronologue in the 23rd century is it's basically like America, only overpowered. It's got this tech that is stronger than atom bombs. They've got this inability to kind of control the world, but they got this power to destroy everything. And chapter 1 starts out, that's the agent in chapter 1. It starts out with an FBI agent kind of showing up and telling the main protagonist, Butch, that not only can he not trust the world around him, but he can't trust others, and he can't even trust himself. He talks about how when he typed in the text in his phone, "I want to be an agent," based off an ad that he saw on a television. They hacked his mind. Process took 4 seconds, but it felt like 4 years. And they trained him to be an FBI agent. They trained him and all how to fight and all that stuff. And it only took 4 seconds, but it felt like 4 years because of the way the network and the way the ether is able to hack them because of the metalite in their body, which controls everything, brain function, it controls everything. And it just basically it yeah, it brings the world, it brings readers into seeing how I think emphasizing on the paranoia that Crawlog's world
Oh yeah,
space has. Yeah.
yeah. There was a lot there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's awesome stuff, man.
Yeah,
So
we went a little over time, but it was a great conversation. I'm gonna do our intro now, and I'll probably cut it and put it in the beginning. So
sure.
what I want to call this
I guess we gotta
podcast.
let the people get back to work now.
Yeah. Well, basically, the intro I had in mind, and this will probably evolve over time, is basically welcome to the Learn from Everyone podcast. I'm your host, Tim,
Yeah.
and today I have Gregory Thomas, and he has been kind enough to be my first ever interview guest. And we recorded this at the end of the podcast, so we're going to have to cut it and put it at the beginning. Because,
All
we
right.
had such a great conversation, we launched right into it.
Yeah.
But as far as
That's
Gregory
cool.
Thomas, as soon as I started reading your work, I knew I want to talk to this guy. And you've got
Yeah.
such interesting perspectives, and we didn't even. I had a bunch of different things written down, and we got off onto some awesome tangents with art and everything else that we didn't even touch on, like your Lydia paradox. For the gamer fans out there,
Uh,
that's Lydia from Skyrim. It's a really
yeah.
interesting article he wrote that we should next we got to do this again, and then we can talk about that. And then your
Yeah.
perspective on Mary Sue as well is really
Yeah.
cool because you made me think of it in a different way. So I guess next time I have you on the podcast, we'll dive into those as well.
Definitely. Well,
Well,
I'll be
Mister,
here. I'll be here. Unless they call me for a job interview. But no, I'll be here definitely. It was awesome talking with you. And
definitely.
if you ever want to check, yeah, if anybody who ever wants to check out my blog, it's cascadialegends.wordpress.com. My book is on Amazon, Chronologue. Just look for the Green Sun and all that stuff. And you can find it all on my blog. Actually, the links are on my blog. My art is on my blog. I got my TikTok, just the blog. You go there, you'll see everything. And yes, I do sell my art. I usually go prices 95 to 100. If anyone's ever interested, just hit me up and let me know.
And I'm going to make you full screen so they can get a few more ideas of your art, because we definitely talked about those. I think my favorite
Mm.
is still the upper right hand above you there with the eyes. The eyes just get me every
Mm.
time. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
probably my personal favorite, just because those eyes really pull me in. And definitely email me all the links you want me to include, and I'll put them in the description of the episodes. That's
Yeah.
cool too.
That's
There's a
cool too,
story
huh?
behind this one.
There's a story behind that one. How about this one? That's cool too.
Yeah, yeah, you've got such a different mix of art styles between each piece.
Got this one too.
Nice. You've got
I
strengths
just
where I have weaknesses. Your
yeah, well,
artistic creativity is far beyond me.
yeah. Well, it's awesome talking with you, Tim. It was real pleasure talking with you. You're a pretty cool dude. It's awesome talking with you. And anytime you want me to have me on your show, definitely we would love to be around.
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna
Hmm.
start getting a proper schedule going, and then I've got your email. Definitely at the end of this call, though, email me all the links you want me to include in this episode, like description and everything, so people know where to find
Hmm.
you. And
Yeah,
yeah, like I said, it's been awesome talking to you, man. I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
definitely. And anybody want to talk on my blog, read my poems, don't be a stranger, man. It's everybody's favorite uncle here. Leave comments.
And because I didn't have time to
Positivity.
get into it, when you go to his website, look for the "What Do I Get Up For" poem he wrote recently. I believe it was 2 3 days ago, and leave some comments, because that was something I wanted to get more of your perspective of. So next time, I've got our
Yeah.
notes, and I'm gonna ask you those questions.
All righty, man.
All right.
Well, all righty, man. You have a good one.
You as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Definitely take care. Happy trails and stay blessed.